Calvin stepped out of his car with a pizza warmer in hand, the heat from the late afternoon sun mixing with the rising scent of melted cheese and garlic. His faded black polo clung slightly to his back, and the scuffed sneakers on his feet made soft sounds against the sleek tile floor of the towering office lobby. He checked the name on the slip again. Veta Systems, 21st floor. Inside, the security desk was unattended, so he made his way to the elevator. A few people in business casual strolled by, their ID badges catching the light. Nobody looked his way. As the elevator opened, he stepped in alone. The building was sleek, sterile, expensive. Glass everywhere. Calvin adjusted the bag on his shoulder. He was used to this routine. Tech companies ordering lunch late, forgetting they'd need to sign something. He didn't expect trouble. Just a signature. Maybe a short wait. Then back to the car. But when the doors opened on the 21st floor, things shifted. The office had no front desk. Just an open space filled with bright furniture and people gathered in clusters, typing, laughing, sipping cold brew. Everyone seemed under 30, dressed in hoodies with logos or carefully ripped jeans. A large screen near the wall flashed a welcome message, Demo Day Team Check-in. Calvin stepped forward slowly, scanning for someone to approach. He raised the pizza bag slightly. Two men near a standing desk noticed him. One nudged the other. Catering's downstairs, man," the taller one said, barely glancing up. Calvin spoke evenly. "I've got an order for Veta Systems. 2 large pizzas, garlic knots, diet soda." Now the shorter one looked up, smirked. "That's us. Must be for the dev team." He didn't move. "You can just leave it by the door. I need a signature." "Seriously?" The taller guy scoffed. "You guys are still doing that?" A few heads turned. Someone chuckled quietly. From behind a frosted glass divider, a voice called out, "Hey, is the pizza here?" The shorter man grinned, still looking at Calvin. "Yup, but we're being held hostage until we sign for it." Another laugh rippled nearby. Someone muttered, "Corporate throwback." Calvin stayed still, expression neutral. "Just doing my job," he said calmly. And then heels clicked across the floor. The glass door opened behind them, and everything began to shift. A woman in a tailored navy blazer stepped through the glass door, her stride direct and unhurried. Late 30s, sharp posture, no badge. She stopped when she saw Calvin, and for a brief second her face lit up, not in confusion but recognition. "Mr. Bradley," she said, walking straight toward him. Her tone was warm, respectful. The smirks faded. The taller guy stepped back slightly. "Wait him." Calvin nodded once. "Right on time," he replied, handing her the warmer. She didn't take it. Instead, she turned to the group still gathered around. "This delivery wasn't for the dev team," she said evenly. "It was mine." Silence. She took the bag from him then, carefully, and placed it on a nearby table. "Mr. Bradley is our guest today," she continued, looking directly at the 2 men who had spoken earlier. "He's one of the early investors in Veta Systems, and a board advisor." Someone coughed. Another shifted in his chair. The shorter man's mouth opened slightly, then closed again. Calvin remained calm, his gaze moving slowly across the room. No anger, no satisfaction, just quiet control. "Do you still need a signature?" she asked him gently. He shook his head. "No, I'm good." And for the first time since he'd stepped onto that floor, no one laughed. Calvin set the empty pizza bag down neatly on a side chair and slid his hands into his pockets. The woman, Harper, as her name tag now revealed, turned toward him again. "Conference room's ready when you are." He nodded. "Appreciate it." As they walked past the stunned employees, Harper slowed, just enough for them to overhear. "Sorry about the welcome," she murmured, her voice low but clear. Calvin didn't glance back. Not the first time. She gave a short, quiet breath, half a laugh, half regret. Shouldn't have to be any time. They reached the end of the hallway. A frosted door slid open into a sunlit conference room. Inside, a group of people in business attire stood as Calvin entered. One man in a blazer stepped forward immediately. "Mr. Bradley, pleasure to finally meet you in person." Calvin shook his hand without ceremony. Looking forward to the demo. From the hallway, the 2 men who had mocked him earlier stood frozen near the doorframe, watching. Their earlier ease now strained, unsure. Harper noticed them but said nothing. She closed the conference room door behind her. Outside, the glass was soundproof, but the silence that followed was still heavy. The office felt different now. No one had told the room to quiet down, but it had. Conversations thinned. The faint clatter of keyboards resumed, but slower. Awkward. The two men, Evan and Tyler, their names finally being whispered, drifted back to their desks without speaking. Neither one sat down. A designer nearby looked up from her monitor, eyes narrowing slightly. "You guys good?" she asked, voice light pointed. Tyler forced a chuckle. "Yeah, just didn't know who he was." "Does that matter?" she replied, gaze steady. Evan scratched his jaw. "It's not like we were rude." "You called him catering," another voice said. Quiet, unaccusing, but there. Neither replied. At the back, someone from HR leaned over and typed something into Slack. Inside the conference room, the lights dimmed slightly as a presentation started. From behind the glass, Calvin's silhouette could be seen, still standing, one hand resting lightly on the back of a chair, calm as ever. It wasn't what he said that was making the difference. It was what he hadn't said. Tyler sat down eventually, but his eyes kept drifting to the conference room. The others had gone back to work, or at least pretended to, but he couldn't shake the pit in his stomach. He replayed the moment, his words, the tone, the smirk he'd worn like armor. It didn't feel funny now. Next to him, Evan hadn't touched his keyboard. "Think we're gonna get called in?" he whispered. Tyler shrugged. "I don't know," but he did. A few feet away, Maya, a junior developer, looked up from her screen. "You didn't even ask his name," she said, not looking at them directly. "I thought he was just what?" she asked, finally meeting his eyes. Tyler didn't answer. The question was bigger than the moment, and they both knew it. Across the office, the elevator dinged. Someone stepped out, clearly from the executive floor, dressed in a dark suit, walking with purpose. They didn't look at Tyler or Evan. They just nodded once toward the glass conference room, and kept moving. The sound of that door opening again brought another silence. Everyone waited. The conference room door opened, and Harper stepped out. She didn't speak at first, just stood there a moment, scanning the floor. Then she said evenly, "If you're not in a meeting, we'll be gathering in the Commons in 5. That was it. No names, no blame, but everyone knew why. Tyler leaned back in his chair, staring up at the ceiling like it could offer him an exit. Evan muttered something, but whatever it was, he didn't repeat it. People began to drift toward the central area of the floor. The energy had changed, lighter for some, heavier for others. Curious eyes, quiet conversations. Harper waited until most were gathered, then opened the sliding glass wall of the conference room. Calvin stepped out. No suit, no title pinned to his shirt. Just a quiet presence that now filled the space without needing to declare itself. Harper gestured toward him. "For those who haven't had the pleasure, this is Mr. Calvin Bradley. He's been with us since our seed round. He believed in this company before it had an office or funding, or even a working product." Whispers moved like wind. Calvin looked at the group, his expression unreadable. And then, finally, he spoke. "I've been here before," Calvin said, voice calm, carrying easily in the quiet room. "Not this office, not this company, but this moment." No one moved. "I've walked into spaces where assumptions got there before I did, where the uniform I wore, whether it was a hoodie, a suit, or just my skin, decided how I'd be treated. A few people shifted uncomfortably. I didn't come here today to teach anyone a lesson. I came to check in, see how things were running, maybe grab a slice of pizza before the meeting." A slight smile touched his face, but it didn't soften the weight of the room. "But what I saw, what I heard, tells me something we can't ignore." He let that hang. People glanced at Evan, Tyler, at each other. Calvin continued, "This company was built on the idea that talent can come from anywhere, that good ideas don't care how you dress or what school you went to. So if the front door doesn't match that value, the rest of it doesn't matter." He wasn't angry. He didn't need to be. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of shame, of thought, of slow recognition. Calvin folded his hands in front of him. "And that's all I came to say." No one clapped. Not because it wasn't powerful, because clapping would have cheapened it. People just stood there, still. A few nodded, quietly. A few avoided eye contact entirely. Tyler looked down at his shoes. Evan was already halfway to the kitchenette, pretending to refill a water bottle. Harper stepped forward. "Thanks, Calvin." She turned to the group. "That's it for now. Back to work. No more ceremony. Just that." Calvin gave a nod and walked back toward the conference room. A few employees moved out of his way without being asked, not in fear, in awareness. As the glass door clicked shut behind him, a different kind of conversation started. Small, unsure, but necessary. Did you hear what he said about the front door? Yeah, kinda makes you think. I mean, he didn't even look mad. Exactly. Maya sat back at her desk, typed something into a private Slack message. We should talk about what happened. Not just today. More than today. Across the office, others sat down too. A few eyes lingered on the conference room. It wasn't over. Not yet. No one clapped. Not because it wasn't powerful, because clapping would have cheapened it. People just stood there. Still. A few nodded, quietly. A few avoided eye contact entirely. Tyler looked down at his shoes. Evan was already halfway to the kitchenette, pretending to refill a water bottle. Harper stepped forward. Thanks, Calvin. She turned to the group. That's it for now. Back to work. No more ceremony. Just that. Calvin gave a nod and walked back toward the conference room. A few employees moved out of his way without being asked. Not in fear. In awareness. As the glass door clicked shut behind him, a different kind of conversation started. Small, unsure, but necessary. Did you hear what he said about the front door? Yeah, kinda makes you think. I mean, he didn't even look mad. Exactly. Maya sat back at her desk, typed something into a private Slack message. We should talk about what happened. Not just today. More than today. Across the office, others sat down too. A few eyes lingered on the conference room. It wasn't over. Not yet. By mid-afternoon, the internal Slack thread titled #CultureCheck had over 50 replies. It started with Maya's message. Then a product manager added, we need onboarding that doesn't just teach tools, but teaches values. Then someone from marketing, we always talk about how we look like the future in our branding. Do we act like it? No names were mentioned. No one called out Tyler or Evan directly, but the tone was clear, measured, honest, and overdue. A senior engineer added, this wasn't a one-time thing. I've seen it before. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's not, but it's here. The thread kept growing. Quiet admissions, suggestions, a link to a DI consultant someone had worked with at a past company, an anonymous form to collect stories. Harper added a message near the top. Leadership will listen. Let's not waste this moment. Tyler saw it all. He didn't respond. Not yet. He sat at his desk, the hum of conversation behind him, and stared at the screen. Slack messages popped up in the corner of his monitor. Not at him. Around him. The company was moving forward, and he knew exactly where he stood, just behind the moment, not ahead of it. The next day, Harper scheduled one-on-one meetings. Short, direct, no HR present, just conversations. Tyler's came mid-morning. He stepped into a small conference room with his hands in his pockets and sat down stiffly. Harper didn't start with pleasantries. I'm not here to punish you, she said, but I want to know what you saw yesterday, and what you've been seeing before that. Tyler hesitated. Honestly, I didn't think twice. I saw a guy with a pizza bag. And you thought you knew his role, she finished. He nodded, slowly. I didn't mean anything by it. That's the problem, Harper said. Calm. Measured. It's not about intention anymore. It's about the air we all breathe here. You helped shape it yesterday. So now you help shift it. Tyler sat with that. He didn't argue. What do you want me to do? He asked. Start by listening. Then speak up next time it's not you being judged. That's the real test. Across the floor, Evan was walking into his own meeting. Neither one would forget this week. But what mattered now wasn't what they'd said. It was what they did next. By Friday, the Slack channel had a pinned message. Starting next month, bias awareness workshops. Optional but encouraged. Led by a facilitator who won't talk down to anyone. Just help us look inward as a team. Calvin hadn't posted anything. He didn't need to. But his name came up often. In reverent DMs, in cautious conversations near the break room, in the way people said Mr. Bradley instead of just that guy. He didn't demand respect. He made people question why they hadn't offered it sooner. Maya met him in the hallway that afternoon. Thanks for what you said, she offered. Calvin looked at her, then nodded. Thanks for what you did after. He kept walking. Small moments like that, quiet, unscripted, were everywhere now. A designer held the elevator for a janitor. A junior dev offered her seat to a visiting contractor. Not because anyone was watching, because they had started watching themselves. And that was the difference. 2 weeks later, Calvin returned. No announcement, no title, just a visit, this time without a pizza bag. He stepped onto the same floor, and something was different. People looked up, not to judge, but to greet. Some nodded, some smiled, one even stood. Tyler spotted him and froze for a second, then walked over. "Mr. Bradley," he said, "I wanted to say, I've been thinking about that day." Calvin looked at him, quiet. "I was wrong," Tyler added, "and I've been working on that." "Really?" Calvin studied him for a moment. "Good," he said finally. "Don't make it about feeling bad. Make it about doing better." Tyler nodded. "Yes, sir." There was no sarcasm in his voice, just something steadier. Calvin moved on. This time, no one tried to direct him. No one asked if he belonged. He just walked, like someone who had nothing to prove and everything already earned. Because now they saw him, not just the man, but what he represented. That afternoon, Harper called a short team huddle. Nothing formal, just a circle near the windows, chairs dragged over without fuss. She glanced around at the faces, some still quiet, some watching her closely. "I want to say one thing," she began. "This company's growing fast. That's good. But speed doesn't excuse blindness. If we lose track of who we are while trying to scale, we lose more than time, we lose trust. No slides, no bullet points." Mr. Bradley didn't ask for attention. He didn't want a speech. But his presence told us more about ourselves than any quarterly review ever could. She paused. Bias doesn't always shout. Sometimes it shrugs. Sometimes it makes jokes and calls it culture. But we've got a chance here to build a place where people don't have to look like success to be treated with dignity. A long silence. Then Maya spoke. "And that's on all of us." Heads nodded. Quietly but sincerely. Nobody clapped. Nobody needed to. Some truths land better in silence. It was nearly 6 p.m. when Calvin exited the building. The lobby was quieter now, the rush of end-of-day movement thinning out. He paused near the glass doors, adjusting the strap of his laptop bag, then stepped outside into the fading light. Behind him, the office floor buzzed softly. Not with noise, but with a different kind of energy, slower, more aware. Small things, subtle changes. At his desk, Tyler sat alone, typing something he hadn't planned to write. A note to a colleague he'd brushed off last month. No apology in the subject line, just an acknowledgement. Maya reviewed the onboarding deck for new hires. Page 2 now said, "We respect everyone, even when we think we already know who they are, especially then." Harper stood by the glass wall of the break room, watching the sun dip behind the skyline. She didn't say much, didn't need to. Somewhere deeper in the building, someone held the door open for a courier without glancing at their uniform. And in the stillness of the street, Calvin walked calmly toward his car. No one ran after him. No one needed to stop him. But they'd remember him, not because of what he carried that first day, but because of what he left behind.